Somewhere beyond the edge of the desert, where the sand no longer whispers and the stars begin to lean in closer, a soft wind drifts through a chamber of polished stone. The lamps have burned low. The walls carry the scent of saffron, cedar wood, and old parchment. And you well. You found yourself here again, quiet, breathing, between time, tonight. We're stepping softly into one of history's most elegant contradictions, a world of silk and iron, of vast empires ruled with both velvet and blade. A world where you, somehow, are not a traveler or a scholar, but something much stranger. You are a royal scribe in the court of the great king of Persia, and you're about to find out that the golden age of empire wasn't all marble columns and grapes on silver platters. There were also secret tunnels, moonlit scrolls, and the very real danger of being promoted into irrelevance. If that sounds like your kind of bedtime story, stay a while. And maybe, if you're listening from a quiet corner of the world tonight, your bed, your couch, your makeshift pillow, drop a comment with where you are and what time it is. I'm always curious who's wandering history with me this late. And hey, no pressure, but if these odd tales help you drift through the night a little easier, there's a subscribe button somewhere. Use it only if you think I've earned it. I'll be here telling stories no one warned you about in class. Under the last faint light of a receding dusk, you stand in the marble courtyard of Persepolis, barefoot, motionless, as the final warmth of the sun fades from the stone beneath your feet. The wind is soft and dry, carrying with it a mixture of crushed rose petals, distant charcoal, and the faintest trace of old honey wine spilled during last moon's festival. The pillars loom above, ivory white and streaked with the slow dust of centuries, carved with lions whose teeth never dull and wings that never folded. You are not royalty. Not yet. You are a scribe, an observant shadow in a golden age that glows too brightly to last. You hold no sword, no ring, no crown, but your ink has ended more lives than most soldiers, and tonight, that ink will once again shape the world. You walk slowly across the polished floor, your cotton robes whispering against your legs. A servant girl passes you without a word, her arms stacked with scrolls tied in indigo twine, her eyes lowered as if the stone tiles were more trustworthy than any man. At the far end of the hall, incense curls from a brazier shaped like a winged bull. The smoke winds upward, scented with sandalwood and ash, and it makes your nose twitch not from irritation, but memory. The scent reminds you of a garden you no longer visit, of someone who no longer waits. You reach the door to the royal archive. It creaks inward before you touch it, as if it too is waiting. Inside, everything is silent. So silent you can hear your own pulse in your ears. You move past the racks of sealed cylinders, past clay tablets etched with laws, curses, and dreams, until you reach a locked chest. The chest bears the seal of Darius, though the king is long gone, and the contents of this box have not seen daylight since the moon last eclipsed the sun. You take the bronze key from your sleeve, insert, twist. The lid opens like a breath drawn after too long underwater. Inside is a single scroll wrapped in oilcloth, heavier than it should be when you lift it. A fine golden thread slips loose from the seal and falls across your hand. It stings. You look down. A thin line of blood begins to bead where it touched. Not enough to wound, just enough to remind. This scroll is not for decoration, it is a message, and it is meant for you. As you unroll the parchment, your fingers tremble slightly, not from fear. No, you have written death warrants and exile decrees by candlelight without a shiver. No, this is not fear, this is recognition. You've seen this hand before. The script is not royal, it is older. It belongs to a man who was erased from the records, a man who once sat beside the king, who knew where the tunnels ran under the city, who could stop a war with a poem or start one with a prayer. They said he died in exile, but here, his hand writes again. It says only one sentence. The lion does not sleep, even when fed. That's it. That's all. But the breath in your lungs turns cold, because tonight, there will be a banquet in the palace. And you, of course, are invited, not because you are important, but because someone thinks you know too much, or too little, or simply because you were born at the wrong time and learned to read too well. You return the scroll, reseal it, replace the key. When you step back into the hall, the torches seem dimmer than before. The murals on the walls, warriors with polished spears and eyes like polished jets seem to lean a little closer. You make your way toward the banquet hall not quickly, not slowly, but with that perfect. Practice neutrality every survivor in the Empire learns to adopt. At the entrance, the music has already begun. Soft flutes, the delicate pluck of a zither, laughter that sounds just a little too staged. You breathe in, the scent of roasted lamb with pomegranate, saffron rice, dates stuffed with honeyed almonds, and just beneath it all, the sharp iron tang of ceremonial daggers freshly polished. A servant offers you wine. You take it, sip, smile, nod. They nod back. Everyone here knows a smile can be a shield or a blade. You find your seat, not too close to the king, not too far from the general, close enough to the fountain that the water can disguise whispers. Across the table, someone lifts a glass toward you. It is the satrap of Susa. He has never looked at you before, not once, tonight. He holds your gaze a little too long, then he smiles, and finally, you understand. This banquet is not for celebration. It is a test. Someone will leave this room in chains. Someone else will leave in power, and you must decide which one you are. You lower your eyes, breathe slowly, and begin to write. Because while kings rule the world, it is scribes who remember how it was made and how, quietly, it may fall again. You open your eyes to the hush of early morning before the court stirs, before the gold-plated columns catch the first light that dares creep past the linen blinds. And you lie there for a while, beneath the painted cedar beams of the royal quarters, feeling the coolness of polished stone against your bare shoulder, your breath soft and deep, the distant coo of a dove from the outer courtyard, reminding you that time, even here in Susa, flows in moments you do not command, not even as one who walks beneath the throne of Xerxes himself, not even as one whose name is spoken in the shadow of carved lions and scented myrrh. For power in this place is not held, it is borrowed, and each day you wear it like you wear the heavy robe of office, beautiful but never quite yours. So you rise slowly, not because you must, but because the ritual of movement is itself a language of belonging, and as your feet meet the cold tile floor, you remember the pattern beneath you, the way the blue and ochre mosaics tell a tale of triumph and silence. Soldiers with curled beards and horned helmets marching forward without ever moving. Frozen forever in glass and fire, while real feet like yours shuffle over them with sand clinging to the soles. And you step forward to where a servant waits with a bronze basin, not speaking, only bowing, and the water she pours smells faintly of rose and river mud, tepid and smooth as it runs over your fingers, over your wrists, and as you dry your hands with linen worn thin by royal skin. You feel the weight of the day press in, not heavy like a burden, but firm like a palm between your shoulder blades, reminding you to stand taller, to walk as if the ancestors were watching, for they are carved into every column and stitched into every curtain, whispering through the folds of the palace itself. And you follow the sound of sandal on marble down the corridor, past tall niches where incense smolders and guards pretend not to glance your way, where the smell of cooked barley and honey cakes wafts from a side hall. And then you reach the threshold of the audience chamber, where Xerxes will sit beneath the gilded canopy, lion paws at the feet of his throne, his gaze unreadable, his silence long, and you know what to say before he even looks at you. Because this is not your first morning here. This is not your first time stepping into history, wearing the skin of someone who must speak carefully, who must bow deeply but not desperately, who must praise but not flatter. And so, you inhale slowly as the curtains part and you are seen, and the floor ahead gleams like sunlit oil, slick and shimmering, and each step is deliberate, your pace measured not by time but by memory, because you remember the first time you walked this hall, younger, uncertain, trembling in a robe too large, feeling like a fraud amid the realness of things, real gold, real power, real fear, and now, years later. The robe fits, but the fear has not left. It has only become more polite, more practiced, hiding behind smiles and knowing nods and the firm grip of your hand on the edge of the scroll you carry, the one that holds news from the West, or maybe from Egypt, or maybe it is empty. A prop in this theater of control, and it does not matter, because when you kneel at the base of the dais and lift your eyes just enough to meet his, you know the emperor does not read your scrolls. He reads your breath, your hesitation, your heartbeat echoing in your ears as if the walls themselves are drums carved from old bones. And when he nods, slowly, as if blessing the continuation of the sun itself, you speak, slowly, clearly, your words chosen like grapes plucked from a vine where the sweetest may hide bitterness. And when it is done, you retreat not with haste, but with dignity. Because haste is the scent of guilt, and in this court, even smells carry meaning. And you are once again in the corridor. But the corridor is different now, as if each step taken within it alters its story. The guards blink slower, the smoke curls tighter, and you find yourself drawn toward the rear of the palace, where fewer feet go, where the walls are cooler, older, lined with cracked reliefs of lions mid-roar and kings mid-conquest. And as you walk, you let your fingers brush the surface of these carvings, feeling the worn edges like the breath of time itself against your skin. And you pass a window open to the garden, where the wind carries the scent of wet earth and orange blossoms, where the splash of water in stone basins mimics laughter. And for a moment, just a moment, you imagine a life without titles, without robes, without messages to deliver or hands to bow before. A life where you sit beneath a fig tree and eat with your fingers, laugh with your mouth open, sleep without silk, and no one records your dreams, but the thought fades quickly, gently, like all good dreams must, because the empire does not wait, and you are summoned once more, and the rest of your day unspools in scrolls and nods and the small rituals of power that never truly change. And as the sun begins to fall behind the blue-glazed towers of Susa, painting your world in copper and shadow, you return to your chamber, where the walls are tall enough to echo even your breath, and you stand in the center of it all, just a figure in a robe, no throne beneath you, no eyes upon you, only the fading scent of oil and the faint rustle of history pressing its lips close to your ear, saying nothing, only breathing. You wake before the palace does, before the light has touched the top of the farthest columns, before the cooks stir the first pots, and before the birds even remember to sing. Because today is the day they crown you, and though your body lies still beneath layers of perfumed wool and softened linen, your mind has already risen, already moved past the hush of dawn into something heavier, deeper, something like stone resting inside your ribs. Not fear. No, fear left days ago, replaced by something slower and stranger, like awe that forgot how to smile. And as you sit up, the robe they left for you rustles like paper soaked in oil, thick and stiff with gold thread, and your fingers brush over the embroidery without needing to look, because you have touched it 1,000 times in your sleep, running over the sigil of the lion with the sun rising behind it, the beast that now stands for you, even though you still wonder if it always stood against you, and your feet find the floor, the stones smoothed by centuries of bare souls that came before yours, each one crowned, each one later buried, and the air in the chamber is cool, still scented with last night's incense, heavy with myrrh and the ghost of jasmine, and someone knocks once, twice, gently, then enters without a word, because words are unnecessary today. Your silence is the crown already, and the servants move around you like wind around a flame, careful not to stir it, not to make it flicker, only to feed it, polish it, clothe it, and they lead you into the chamber where the mirror pool waits, where tradition says you must see your face reflected before the gods will see you fit to rule, and as you kneel beside the water, still and dark as obsidian, your own eyes look back at you with a kind of unfamiliar stillness, as if they belong to a figure carved on a wall, not to a man who once played in dust and drank from clay cups. And behind you, the chant begins, slow and low, voices braided together like ropes of smoke rising from sacred fires. And you stand, not because they call you, but because your body remembers how to move even when your heart forgets. And step by step, barefoot on cold stone, you cross into the throne room where all eyes wait, not with hunger, but with calculation, Not with reverence, but with caution, because they know you now hold something they once tried to grasp. And though you walk in silence, the noise is everywhere, in the rustle of robes, the creak of archways, the scrape of sandals shifting as you pass. And when you reach the dais, the priest lifts the crown, wrapped in linen, gold and turquoise and lapis, strung together like sunlight, made solid. And you bow your head, not low, just enough to let it rest upon you. And in that moment, there is no thunder, no cry of the heavens, only the weight, the very real, very human weight of metal warmed by another's hands, pressing into your skull like a second spine. And when you raise your head, the room exhales, as if it too was waiting to see if you would break. But you don't. Not yet. And the first to bow is the same one who once doubted you most. And the last is the child too young to know why. But he bows anyway. And when it is done, when the formalities have dissolved into the first awkward meal where everyone pretends to be comfortable with your new face, you find a moment alone, back in the garden where water dances from the mouths of stone lions, where orange trees lean lazy in the afternoon light, and you sit beneath one, cross-legged like the child you used to be. And the breeze brings you the scent of roasted nuts and the laughter of someone behind a column. And for a moment, only a moment, you forget the weight on your head and just breathe. And you wonder what the first king felt, the one who ordered the first stone laid, who walked these grounds before the roots of these trees even reached the dust. Did he feel chosen or simply trapped? And when the shadow grows long beside you, you rise again. Because the day is not over, and kings are not allowed to end anything, not even a thought, without being summoned. And the robe tightens across your chest as you walk, heavier now with sweat and ceremony. But your step is steady, and when you pass the carved lions guarding your quarters, they do not blink, but you feel seen anyway, as if stone itself has acknowledged you. And that, more than the voices or the crown or the bows, is what lingers most as the sky deepens and the lamps are lit, and your attendants whisper of sleep. Though you are not yet tired, only full, like a cup too close to the brim. And so you sit alone for a while longer, tracing your fingers over the pattern of the mosaic beneath your throne, the old one, the one worn smooth by your father's foot, and his father's before him. And you wonder how many of their fears were the same as yours, how many of their breaths caught in the throat just before dawn. And when you finally rise, when the torchlight flickers against the lion etched on your door, you pause, just briefly, and whisper something no one hears, not even you. You wake to a different kind of silence today. Not the hush of dawn in a marble chamber, but the murmuring stillness of a city already breathing. A city made not of roofs and roads, but of stone platforms and columns that rise like petrified trees into the pale morning sky. And the sun has not yet reached the top of the gates of all nations, but you can already feel its warmth gathering in the stones beneath your feet. And as you step out onto the vast terrace of Persepolis, your sandals whisper across limestone, smoothed by thousands of years of feet like yours, though none exactly like yours. And the scent of dry grass, of warmed dust, and the faintest trace of incense clinging to your cloak folds around you as naturally as air, and below. The palace workers have already begun their quiet ballet, the scribes unrolling their wax tablets, the servants arranging fruit that will be ignored and flowers that will be forgotten. And you descend a staircase flanked by reliefs of soldiers and tribute bearers, carved so finely you half expect them to turn and nod, each with garments flowing in stone wind, each with eyes too knowing to be entirely still. And, as you walk, you pass a group of builders reshaping a balustrade, their hammers wrapped in cloth to dampen the noise, for no one disturbs the king's morning path. And your fingers trail lightly along the cool stone rail as you descend toward the central hall, where pillars stand like giants too polite to kneel, and the air smells faintly of cedar, of the oils rubbed into the doors, and of old charcoal from last night's council fire. And when you pause at the threshold, one of the guards bows without looking at you directly, and you realize, not for the first time, how strange it is to be both man and symbol, breath and expectation. And the sounds of the day begin to swell, a merchant arguing softly in median, a page shuffling papyrus scrolls, The distant creak of wagon wheels delivering tribute from the edges of an empire so large you still cannot quite imagine its full shape. And you eat only dates this morning, one by one, their flesh clinging to the pit like something reluctant to let go. And the juice sticks sweetly to your fingers as you sit under a canopy in the courtyard and watch two gardeners argue silently with hand gestures over how best to prune a myrtle tree. And a cat with one ear torn sits beside your chair as if she owns it, her eyes golden and unimpressed, and the breeze picks up around mid-morning, carrying the sharp scent of copper from the artisans' district and the sour tang of dye from the cloth workers who soak their hands in color all day. And you remember being led through that district once as a boy, amazed by a man who could paint red onto silk with just his breath and a handful of powder. And you wonder where he is now, and whether he tells stories about the time the king's son wandered through his tent and asked him why he smelled like vinegar. And you wander through the treasury next, not for inspection, but for habit, passing stacked jars sealed with wax and rope, each containing coins, beads, tiny ivory figurines, and always one lid just barely askew, one mystery tucked away by fingers that did not fear punishment. And you say nothing, because it is more comforting to let the mystery breathe than to solve it. And the torches cast a flicker across the walls, lighting up carvings of gods with wings, of beasts with eagle heads and lion paws who guard thresholds even time respects. And by the time you return to your private hall, the sky has changed, not darker, not brighter, just softer, as if it too is content to rest in your presence, and the cloth over your seat is warm from the sun, smelling faintly of saffron and sweat, and you close your eyes just for a moment, not to sleep, not yet, but to listen, to feel. And the sound that reaches you is not voices, not wheels or wind or birds, but something deeper, like the breath of stone itself, slow and patient, waiting for nothing, needing nothing, simply being. And when you open your eyes, a tray has been left beside you with almonds and honeyed wine, and a single pomegranate split in two, its seeds gleaming like rubies against the pale silver plate. And you take one seed, just one, and press it between your teeth until it bursts, sharp and bitter and perfect. And somewhere behind the hall, a boy sings a lullaby in old Elamite, though no one knows where he learned it, and you let the melody braid itself into your thoughts. And for a while, there is no weight of crown, no language of power, no echo of empire, only Persepolis as it is, as it was, as it might always bestow, sunlight, and the breath of a man who once walked here and simply looked around. You move slowly through a passage lit by firelight, and the scent of roasted lamb and honeyed lentils follows you like a trail of memory, and your hand grazes the smooth reliefs on the wall wine bearers, musicians, lion hunts, none of it alive, and yet everything breathing in the flicker of oil lamps hanging from iron brackets. And your sandals press into mosaic floors too detailed for the eye to drink in at once. So you surrender instead to the rhythm of your steps, to the echo they leave behind as if the stones themselves are whispering back to you. And ahead, the hall opens, vast and low and shimmering with gold leaf and polished obsidian, a place where laughter is always too soft, like the tail end of a secret. And you are not here to feast, but to observe, to drift unseen as you sometimes do in these evenings, where protocol is not law but shadow, and the nobles gather already, draped in linen dyed with indigo and saffron, and pinned with brooches shaped like falcons or the heads of bulls, and you pass them without touching, without speaking, only noticing the details, a cracked toenail hidden beneath a golden sandal, a nervous twitch in a woman's cheek each time her husband jokes too loudly, a man who scratches his ring finger endlessly as if the band were cursed and tightening, and servants move between them like water, pouring wine into cups too full, offering figs sliced so thin they're translucent, arranging bowls of roasted almonds and dried rose petals and salt, cured fish on silver trays with handles shaped like lions and swans. And at the far end, the dais gleams, empty, but for a pair of empty thrones, one for the king, one for no one, and you feel a breeze from the upper vents high above, where cool air slides down between carved columns like breath down the back of your neck, and the music begins, slow, and layered, with reed flutes and hammered strings, and a drum struck with a palm softened by oil. And it is not music to dance to. Not here. It is music to sit inside, to be lulled by as the faces blur and the night thickens. And you know there are spies in this room. You always know. Not because they wear different clothes or carry different tools, but because they listen differently. Too still, too careful. And you wonder how many of them have been trained to follow your eye, not your orders. And somewhere a child giggles, though there are no children present. And you taste pomegranate again in the back of your throat, though you haven't eaten since the sun dipped below the outer wall. And there is a man telling a story now, about a leopard caught in the royal gardens. And everyone laughs at the part where it slips on polished tile and crashes into a jar of olives. But you remember the man who died from that leopard's bite, though no one mentions him, not even in jest. And the light bends through the alabaster lanterns and turns skin to bronze, to gold, to marble. And it is easy in these moments to forget that this banquet sits on top of decisions, that behind every silk curtain lies a ledger, that the grapes were grown by hands now blistered, that the wine was carried across deserts by men who may never return, and a servant passes you, brushing too close, her breath sharp with coriander and fear, and you wonder what she's been told, and you don't turn your head as she disappears behind the pillar carved with twin lions biting each other's tails. And at last, the king enters not in ceremony, not in announcement, but in silence, which is louder, more absolute, and everyone stands too quickly, knocking over a bowl, spilling a cup, and your heart does not race, but it shifts slightly, as if bracing for something unseen, and the king does not speak. He only raises a hand and sits, and then everyone else sits, and the music does not change. But now it feels different, more distant, more reverent. And you know that this too is a performance, a ritual like any other. And when a dish of stewed quail is offered to him, he takes none, and you watch the servant's hand tremble slightly as she retreats, and no one mentions it. But later, someone will ask where she went, and no one will know. And the evening deepens. The wine dulls the edges of caution. Words begin to loosen. But not yours. Never yours. And you press your palm into the carved arm of your seat, tracing the grooves of a scene where a king slays a demon with a lion's head and a serpent's body. And the wine glows garnet in your goblet, but you do not drink. Not tonight. Not with so many mouths smiling and none of them reaching the eyes. And someone is telling another story now, about a eunuch who lost a sandal in the harem and was accused of being a lover. And you smile at the expected moment, but your mind is elsewhere, with the moon above the courtyard and the horses sleeping in the stables, and the torch left burning just a little too brightly in the chamber of scrolls. And when you finally stand to leave, no one stops you, no one dares. And as you walk back through the long hall, the torches hiss slightly, as if exhaling what they've seen, and your shadow follows behind you, longer than before, and perhaps a little quieter too. You descend slowly, step by step, as the corridor narrows and cools, the torches left behind flickering faintly in the distance until even their warmth is forgotten, and the only light comes from a small oil lamp in your hand, its flame dancing in rhythm with your breath. And each footfall echoes more loudly than the last, though no one walks behind you, and you begin to notice the smell, earth and dust, and the faint sting of long-cooled incense. Something musky, something ancient, like a whisper sealed in stone. And the walls around you are carved not with grand victories or divine blessings, but with quieter scenes. Hands pouring oil, eyes closed in mourning, a single falcon perched beside an empty throne, and your fingers brush over one panel, feeling where a chisel once hesitated before completing the curve of a cheekbone. And beneath your palm, the stone is cold, smooth, and patient, as if it remembers everything but refuses to speak until asked properly. And further down the slope bends, curving deeper into the earth, where the air becomes thick with stillness, not quite oppressive but watchful, and you know without being told that this is where the royal dead are kept. Not in caskets of jewels displayed for worship, but in silence, wrapped tightly in linen, placed behind locked doors of basalt and copper, away from the noise of living memory. And you pause before one such door, your lamp casting its glow across symbols etched not for beauty, but for binding, protective glyphs meant to confuse the curious, to ward off whatever still lingers. And you wonder whether they are meant to keep something in or something out. And the bronze latch yields beneath your fingers, squealing faintly, as if protesting your touch. And the chamber opens not with a rush, but with a sigh, like a breath held too long finally escaping. And inside the room is low and still and strangely warm, as though the walls remember body heat. And your eyes adjust slowly to the shadows, where a stone sarcophagus lies at the center, unadorned but flawless, its surface uncracked, its weight unchallenged by time. And beside it sit clay jars sealed with wax, feathers tucked into the seams, their purposes unknown but not unfelt. And the scent here is older, darker, less of rot and more of reverence, like dried rose and charred resin and dust from 1,000 years of waiting. And you kneel without realizing it, not out of piety, but out of instinct, because some spaces are shaped for humility. And as you lower the lamp to the floor, the flame flickers wildly, then calms, as if acknowledging something unseen. And you place your hand upon the stone lid, which feels heavier than it should, denser somehow, as though it carries more than the body within. Perhaps the regrets, the secrets, the memories embalmed alongside sinew and bone. And though you do not lift the lid, you sense the presence below, not hostile, not restless, but aware. And in your mind you begin to see fragments, not visions but impressions. A hand clutching a bronze dagger too late, a face turned away from a final sunrise, a voice speaking a name that will never again be spoken aloud. And the air seems to thicken with meaning, the way smoke does when prayers rise, curling towards something that may or may not listen. And behind you, deeper in the dark, a soft sound, perhaps water dripping or stones settling, or perhaps neither. Perhaps something watching, breathing with you, and you do not move, not yet. Because leaving too quickly feels like breaking a pact, and your fingers trace the rim of the sarcophagus again, slower now. And you remember a phrase once carved above the city gates: the body forgets, but the stone remembers. And you wonder if the stone beneath your palm remembers your face from another life, or someone like you, kneeling just the same, holding a lamp just this dim, asking questions without words. And the silence answers you not in speech but in sensation, a slow ache behind your eyes, the weight of sand pressing down on your shoulders, the faint taste of iron on your tongue. And when you finally rise, it is not because you are done, but because the space has released you, the way a river eventually yields its current. And as you step backward into the corridor, the lamp now dimmer, the heat from the chamber fades like breath on a window, and the bronze door swings shut with a gentleness that feels deliberate, as if the tomb itself understands restraint. And you walk upward again, toward the light you left behind, not quickly, not slowly, but with the careful pace of one who has just heard something sacred without understanding why. And the air shifts with you, cooler now, brushing against your cheek like fingers from the past. And somewhere above, the torches still burn, though fainter than before. And as you reach the top of the stairs, you do not look back, not out of fear, but out of respect, because you know that what lies beneath does not need your memory to exist, it simply waits. You step into the garden not by force or command, but as though you have always been walking toward it, and the moment your feet touch the tiled path, you feel the warmth of the earth rise into your ankles, not harsh, but like the memory of morning sun after a long winter. And before you stretches a symmetry so deliberate, it seems effortless, where cypress trees rise tall and narrow beside low marble basins, and aqueducts carved from smooth limestone carry water in hushed streams that bend and curl like ink across parchment. And the scent here is unlike anything above ground fresh myrtle and rose. Yes, but also crushed mint beneath heel, and fig leaves warmed by afternoon heat, and somewhere nearby, the faintest sweetness of ripened dates falling silently onto soft soil. And you walk without hurry, your fingertips brushing the edges of laurel branches, cool and sharp. And further along, you come upon an orchard enclosed within the larger garden, where pomegranates hang split at the seam, revealing their jeweled hearts, and bees hum lazily from flower to flower, as though they too have forgotten urgency. And it is here you notice the gardeners, not servants in the usual sense, but older men with sand-colored robes and hands the color of dark wood, moving slowly with copper tools, pruning not out of duty, but of devotion, each cut precise, each motion a prayer to the order of things. And one nods to you, but does not speak, for this is not a place of speech, and you move on, deeper, past fountains where birds rest, unafraid, their wings folded in the confidence of long peace. And you come to a shaded corridor where climbing vines form a roof of green, and light passes through in trembling fragments, dappling your skin like blessings without language. And there you find the inscription, etched into glazed tile. Each letter in Old Persian looped in elegance. This garden does not grow for beauty, but for stillness. And you smile because it is both. And the stillness they speak of is not silence, but harmony. The way wind passes through reeds without altering their shape. And at the center of the garden lies a platform wide, circular, carved from white stone, veined with gold. And here Darius himself once stood. Not to command armies, not to receive tribute, but to walk barefoot in the dew of morning, to listen to the world without speaking over it. And you remove your sandals, feeling the cool of the platform beneath your arches. And you understand now why this was his sanctuary, why even kings needed refuge from the crown. And standing there you sense what he must have felt, how the empire, vast and teeming, stretched beyond every wall and gate. Yet here, in this garden, none of it mattered, only the breath, the bird song, the certainty that everything is in motion and yet perfectly still. And you lie down then, without thinking, arms at your sides, eyes closed to the filtered sunlight, and the earth hums quietly beneath your spine, not a sound, but a pulse, and in that pulse you hear 1,000 years, the voices of workers who built the aqueducts, of women who pressed oils from olives, of scribes who once sat here and wrote names that have long turned to ash, and you realize that none of them knew you would come, and yet the space was waiting just the same, and as your hand trails across the stone beside you, you feel something etched shallowly, a lotus, almost worn away by centuries of wind, but still there, and your fingers trace the curve of its petals. And you remember then the story told in whispers that Darius had this flower carved by his own hand on the night he received news of a betrayal, not out of anger, but to remember what could still bloom despite sorrow. And suddenly the garden seems even more sacred, not because of power, but because of grief. And you sit up slowly, the sky above now shifting into dusk, the color of wet bronze, and lanterns are being lit by unseen hands, each one glowing amber along the edges of the garden walls, casting soft light over fig trees and marbled steps. And as you rise, your bare feet lift no dust, and the air begins to cool, not sharply, but gently, the way old cloth cools in moonlight, and you begin walking again, toward a low stone archway where two blue-tiled lions face one another in silence, and you pass beneath them, not as a guest, not as a ruler, but as something in between. And just before the path turns, you look back once more at the garden, where everything still moves slowly, the water flows, the bees hum, the petals turn ever so slightly toward the night. And you understand now that stillness does not mean absence, it means presence. So full it can hold the memory of empires and yet still leave room for the sound of your breath. You wake before the light changes, the sky above you still the soft shade of slate, and as you step beyond the quiet archways of the inner courtyard, you are met not by silence, but by a kind of living hush, the way a city breathes just before it remembers its name. And the stone beneath your feet holds the last of the night's cool, smooth and comforting like the back of a well-worn cup. And you follow the sound before the sight, a low murmur rising through the narrow streets like steam from a simmering bowl. And then, like a curtain parting, you arrive, and there it is, the market of Persepolis at dawn. A place not grand in its announcements, but rich in rhythm. Already alive with movement though, the sun has yet to crest the roofs. And the smell is the first thing that enters you, before even the images, the sweet sharpness of ripe melons sliced open beside woven baskets, the dust of coriander drifting from small clay bowls, the dense warmth of fresh bread baking on curved iron domes set over embers still glowing. And above it all, the soft animal musk of camels resting near their bundles, their breath visible in the morning chill. And, as you move deeper into the rows of stalls, your fingers trail across hanging fabrics dyed in shades of saffron, plum, and pomegranate, colors that seem to hum softly in the dim light. And the vendors do not call to you, not with voices, but with glances, slight nods, a tilt of the head, gestures born of long practice and mutual respect. And beside them, their children crouch behind low trays of almonds and candied figs, their hands sticky but careful as they count the day's first coins. And you are not a stranger here, not in this moment, not with the soft sandaled steps you take, or the way your shoulder grazes the edge of a stack of folded rugs smelling faintly of wool and cedar. And there is music too, not played but occurring, in the clink of pottery being shifted, in the rhythm of a knife trimming herbs, in the laughter of two women over a bunch of slightly bruised dates. And just beyond, you spot the storyteller's bench, not yet occupied, but ready. Its cushions faded and indented from decades of use, where by midday a man with a beard like river reeds will speak of kings and monsters and lovers who turn to birds. But now it is only you, and the scent of cardamom lingering like a memory, and someone hands you something without asking. Small cup of hot drink, spiced and thick, and you hold it with both hands, feeling the heat in your palms, letting it settle there before sipping. And the taste is strange at first, bitter and sweet at once, like burnt honey or crushed bark, but it stays with you, warming not your throat, but the space behind your ribs. And you turn a corner and find the animal pens, not loud, but filled with steady sound, bleating. Soft clucks, the occasional grunt of a sleepy goat shifting its weight. And among them is a man with arms dark as soil and a voice so low it seems he's speaking not to the beasts, but to the morning itself. And they respond not with fear, but with stillness, their bodies quieting beneath his hands. And behind him, a large clay urn leaks water from a hairline crack, drop by drop, forming a tiny pool in the dust where a small bird drinks and flutters away. And you continue, past the spice sellers and the pot menders and the glass blowers who shape bowls like soap bubbles, their breath the only bellows needed, and each face you pass is lined not with worry, but with work, the kind that keeps hands busy and hearts from falling asleep. And you pause before a table of carved figurines, miniature animals shaped from lapis and jasper, and you lift one a lion, small enough to rest in your palm, its mane etched with lines so fine they feel like threads beneath your thumb. And the woman behind the table watches you with a smile that suggests she has seen this scene 100 times, and yet still enjoys the unfolding, and she says nothing, only nods as if to say yes, that one is yours. And you take it with a bow of your head, slipping it into your robe, feeling its weight settle near your hip, a reminder that, even in empires, small things endure. And above you now, the sky begins to shift, not fast, but steadily. Soft gold creeping along the edges of awnings and catching in the beads that hang from stall corners, and the marketplace seems to glow from within, lit not by flame or sun, but by the shared breath of its people, their rhythms, their patience, their ancient choreography that continues without music. And as you walk once more toward the edge of the market, the noise behind you thickens, not loud, but layered, like waves lapping a harbor wall, and you pass a man who smells of sheep and salt, and another who balances a tray of eggs on his head with such grace you do not see a single one shift. And a child runs past you with a bundle of something wrapped in linen, chased by another holding a spoon, and you smile, because for all the gold and glory of kings, it is here, in this messy, fragrant, ordinary morning, that the true empire lives not in marble, but in olives and laughter and the scrape of knife on stone. As the light fades from the sky and the last blush of saffron sinks below the western hills, you find yourself climbing a gentle rise behind the palace walls, where torchlight dances on the stones like fireflies caught in golden jars, and a wide terrace opens before you, quiet for now, save for the rustle of linens being unfurled, goblets placed, and platters uncovered. And you realize this is no ordinary meal, not a hurried feast between battles or a somber political affair. but something slower. Oldera, banquet of stars, called forth not by power, but by reverence. For the sky above is already pricked with silver, and the night is settling like silk upon your shoulders, cool and heavy and laced with scent. And you step slowly across the mosaic floor, each tile smooth and cool beneath your bare feet, forming images of lions and lilies and winged bulls. And you are handed a thin cushion, embroidered with green vines, and shown where to sit, not by command but with a soft gesture, as if you had always been expected here. And the low tables are already filling with bowls shaped like flower petals, each one holding something exquisite: dates wrapped in fig leaves, almonds soaked in rosewater, lamb cooked so slowly it falls apart at the whisper of a spoon, and rice steamed with saffron until it gleams like sunlight. And you are offered wine, dark and heady, poured from a jug shaped like a griffin. And the cup you hold is cold at first, then warm as your hand finds its place around it. And you bring it to your lips not in thirst, but in ritual, tasting not just grapes, but years, soil, wind, and memory. And beside you, a woman with eyes lined in kohl and hands adorned with gold bangles tears a piece of bread and dips it into a sauce of pomegranate and mint, her movements slow, practiced, generous. And when she offers you the piece, you take it without speaking, because there is nothing to explain, only to share. And above you, the stars wheel slowly, lazily, as if drunk on their own light, and musicians begin to play at the edge of the terrace, not loudly, but tenderly, a sandtour's metallic whisper rising like mist, joined by the low breath of a reed flute and the distant echo of a drum whose rhythm is not meant to stir your feet, but to cradle your heartbeat. And conversation flows in a dozen tongues, laughter blooming like jasmine around you, gentle and unforced. And somewhere, just beyond the lanterns, someone recites a poem older than any king still remembered. And though you do not know every word, you understand its shape, the arc of longing, the flicker of joy, the ache of beauty. And your body, fed and warmed, begins to slow its pulse, syncing with the rhythm of this place, as if the empire had pulled your name from the wind and welcomed it into its breath. And then come the dancers, not flamboyant, but elemental, their arms wide as wings, their robes billowing like sails in the desert wind, their steps a prayer to the ground. And when they spin, they do so with such grace that the torches seem to pause, their flames steady, mesmerized, and you watch without blinking, because to blink would be to miss the moment the world forgets its weight. And just as suddenly, the dancers are gone, melting into the dark like a dream you're not sure you had. And the music softens again, now just strings and air, and more food arrives, delicate this time, sweets laced with honey and crushed pistachio, and small spoons of yogurt with saffron threads so fine they dissolve before you can taste them. And someone sets before you a plate of melon slices shaped like crescent moons, their flesh cool and wet. And as you bite into one, the juice runs down your hand and no one minds, because mess is part of pleasure. And then an old man, white-bearded and smiling with his whole face, leans forward and tells a joke about a drunk goat and a Persian prince. And the punchline is ridiculous, but perfect. And laughter breaks around the terrace like a soft clap of thunder, rolling gently and fading back into the night. And you lean back now, full not just in body, but in spirit. And the stars above you are closer than you remember, almost low enough to pluck. And for a moment, just a moment, you are sure that this place, this time, this breathe is the exact center of the world, not drawn on any map, not claimed by any king, but held gently in the space between candle and shadow, bread and laughter, music and memory. And you exhale slowly, your chest rising like the desert wind behind distant mountains. And you feel not heavy, not tired, but wrapped in something older than sleep, something quieter than peace. And still the night hums, and still the banquet continues. You do not remember standing up or being guided away, but now your feet move with purpose down a narrow path flanked by low sandstone walls. And though the laughter and music of the banquet still echo somewhere behind you, it is the hush ahead that draws you. A silence not empty, but waiting, like a room where incense has just burned out. And before long, the path gives way to a garden, not one of bright roses or imperial pomp, but something more intimate, enclosed, secretive. And as you step past the carved wooden door, its hinges sighing like old lungs, the world folds in on itself, and you are surrounded by scent, not sharp, but soft green fig, crushed myrtle, and the faint mineral breath of clay pots still warm from the day's heat. And overhead, the trees are taller than you imagined, their branches heavy with pomegranates like lanterns about to burst. And in the dimness, you hear the softest drip of water, steady, purposeful, falling into a basin hidden behind ferns. And you follow it not with your ears, but with your body, as though your skin remembers how to seek stillness. And the stone beneath your feet is cool, not cold, worn smooth by hundreds of steps like yours. And every turn in the garden offers no surprise, only recognition, as if the paths were drawn long ago from the map of your breath. And soon, you find a bench tucked beneath a tree whose leaves smell of lemon and rain. And you sit, not because you are tired, but because the bench knew you were coming. And the stillness here is not the absence of sound, but its concentration, each rustle of branch, each flutter of a bat's wing overhead, each creak of bark expanding in the night becomes sacred, sharp, infinite. And your body responds by slowing, not by force, but by consent, as if your heart has remembered something older than language. And above you the stars blink between the leaves, reflected in the narrow channel of water that runs through the center of the garden, lined with blue tiles so dark they look black until the moonlight kisses them. And somewhere nearby, hidden from view, a gardener moves slowly, brushing petals into a basket, his footsteps so soft they might be mistaken for a breeze. And though you cannot see him, you know he is there not a servant but a steward, a witness, tending not just to plants but to the breathing soul of this space. And in his movements you sense reverence, as though each flower were a verse, each leaf a word in a sacred scroll read only by night. And time here does not pass but stretches, folds, rests its head on your shoulder, and you find yourself thinking of nothing and everything all at once, of silk canopies and sun-warmed dates, of horses crossing deserts and laughter around low tables, of hands dipped in water before meals and stories pass through generations like shared bread. And when the wind shifts slightly, carrying with it the faint aroma of frankincense and something sweeter, perhaps jasmine, you realize this garden is not just a place, but a memory preserved in scent and stone, a hush made visible. And it asks nothing of you except to be. And so, you are not a prince or a guest or a dreamer, but simply present, a breath among leaves. And you lean back, letting your fingers trail into the cool water flowing beside the bench. And even the ripples you make move slowly, unwilling to disturb the peace that lives here. And a bird's maul, gray, fearless, flutters down to sip from the same stream. And it does not startle at your presence, because here, nothing fears and nothing hurries. And the moon rises higher, its light gentle as milk on old stone, and you close your eyes not to sleep, but to listen deeper. And in the dark behind your lids, you see vines climbing palace walls, and sandals on mosaic floors, and a boy laughing as he runs through a colonnade with a fig in his hand. And you do not know if the memory is yours or borrowed, and it does not matter, because it is real here, and true, and whole, and the garden breathes around you, slow, ancient, kind, and for a while. That is enough. You do not open your eyes, not at first, because the air has already changed, carrying with it the weight of a moment about to pass, the heaviness not of sorrow, but of ceremony. And somewhere beyond the garden walls, there is movement quiet, disciplined, slow, and the scent in the air is no longer the soft perfume of night, but the sharper, cleaner essence of oiled leather, polished bronze, and sand recently stirred by many feet. And when you finally lift your lids, the light has shifted from silver to amber, the sky blushing pale rose as the sun edges above the horizon, and shadows stretch like long fingers across the courtyards, touching every column and mosaic tile with farewell. And you rise without instruction, drawn by an ancient pulse, stepping once more into the palace corridors now filled with hushed preparation, where servants move like ghosts, eyes lowered, hands swift but graceful, folding linens, adjusting belts, wiping dust from ceremonial sandals, And even the birds seem to fly more deliberately this morning, circling low above the colonnades, as if paying respects to what is to come. And when you reach the inner court, the air is heavier, not with heat, but with anticipation. And the king stands there, not robed in gold, but in travel garb, simple in design, but rich in fabric. A long cloak of dark indigo wrapped tightly over his shoulders, his boots laced to the knee, his expression unreadable but not unfeeling. And around him stand the chosen few advisors, guards, one quiet scribe holding a scroll with shaking fingers. And though none speak, their bodies hum with the dignity of ritual. And as you move closer, your own breath falls into the rhythm of theirs, slow, intentional, reverent. And the horses are brought forward, not the usual battle mounts, but long-legged desert stallions, coats glistening like burnished clay, their bridles adorned with small bells that do not ring, but whisper. And the king places his hand on the neck of the lead horse and holds it there for a moment, not out of affection, but communion. And nearby, a woman, you do not know her name, stands behind a carved pillar, holding a single fig wrapped in cloth. And when the king turns to her, she does not cry, but nods. And he nods in return. And something in that silent exchange makes your chest tighten, as though you have witnessed a secret older than language. And the caravan begins to form, not with haste, but with elegance. The guards lining up in 2 rows, the scribes climbing into small chariots, the healers walking barefoot beside the baggage animals, and behind them, the king mounts his horse in one fluid motion. And for a moment, you see him not as ruler, but as man tired perhaps, but resolute. And when he lifts his gaze to the rising sun, the light paints his face in gold and fire, and the palace seems to hold its breath, every stone and arch and curtain trembling at the threshold of absence. And then the drums begin low, slow, like the heartbeat of the earth, and the caravan begins to move, not like soldiers, but like a river of history flowing forward. And you walk alongside them only for a moment, your feet matching the rhythm until the last chariot passes. And then you stop, turning back to look at the palace now bathed in morning light, the windows reflecting not sky, but memory, and the silence returns, not empty, but full, and in the garden behind you. The fig tree rustles in the breeze, dropping one overripe fruit to the path below, and as you walk back, the drums fading. You wonder how many mornings like this have passed unseen. How many departures were witnessed only by the trees and tiles, and though the king is gone, something of him remains not in banners or statues, but in the echo of his footsteps, in the hush of the rooms he touched, in the scent of saddle oil on the stone bench where he once sat. And you place your hand there gently, the warmth still lingering, and close your eyes once more, not in sorrow, but in recognition, because you too are now part of the silence that watches kings ride away. You awaken not with urgency, but with the scent of something warm and old and deeply human, something that reaches into your lungs and makes you pause before the first breath fully draws. And when your eyes adjust to the shifting half-light, you are standing in a small alcove overlooking the lower quarter of the city, a place that smells of wheat and ash and thyme, and below you stretches a street curved like a riverbed, uneven cobbles catching the early sun. And everywhere there is movement, but not the ceremonial silence of royal courts. This is the movement of daily need, of ritual born not from decree but from repetition, from necessity. And from the open window below your post, you see her, the bread maker, a woman of neither youth nor age, wrapped in linen stained by flour and soot, her forearms strong, knotted like olive roots, and her fingers move without thought, shaping dough into round forms with the grace of breath itself. And beside her sits a child, perhaps hers, perhaps someone left with her for safety, dusty, silent, wide-eyed, cradling a bowl of dates and peeling each with great ceremony as if they were gifts from a god. And you watch as the woman kneels to stoke the fire under her clay oven, the flames licking the round dome, casting shadows that dance against the whitewashed wall like flickering spirits. And when she rises again, her hair clings damply to her temples, and she wipes her brow with the same cloth she uses to dust flour from the counter. And nothing about her is polished, and yet everything about her is holy, and for a moment you can feel the heat from the oven as if it were beside you. Hear the dull thump of kneaded dough as though it came from your own hands. And behind her, along the rear shelf, rest loaves from earlier in the morning, cracked, golden, some round, some flat, their crust glistening with olive oil or dusted with caraway, and every few moments a hand reaches through the open archway, coins clinking on the sill, and she gives a nod, never pausing her rhythm, handing over warm bread wrapped in fig leaves, a transaction more sacred than any proclamation, because this, you realize, is the blood of the city, not the soldiers or scribes or kings, but this woman with her cracked nails and quiet eyes. And you feel an odd tightness in your throat, something like longing or guilt, or the ache of knowing that no scroll will remember her name. Yet every merchant and mother and mason in this quarter eats by her hands, and beyond the window, the city pulses softly, smoke curling up from other ovens, donkeys braying, a pot breaking, someone shouting in a voice too full of life for this early hour. And the child by her side lifts a warm roll to his mouth, tearing it open and watching the steam rise like magic. And you wonder how many kings ate such bread and never knew from whose hands it came, and how many empires have risen and crumbled without once thanking the women who fed their builders. And in that narrow street, the morning stretches on, lazy and full, and the heat from the oven rises steadily, mixing with the dust to create something like incense. And the woman hums a tune with no words, a lullaby for dough and ash and fire, and you find yourself breathing to its rhythm, your own pulse slowing to match the flicker of her flame. And somewhere a bell rings, not loudly, but enough to draw the pigeons from the roof and send a cat skittering through the alley with a fishbone in its mouth. And the world feels very old and very new all at once. And your body leans into the wall beside the window, stone warm against your shoulder, the scent of yeast lingering sweetly in your nostrils. And you close your eyes, not to leave this moment, but to preserve it, to seal it inside like a loaf wrapped in linen, carried across miles by traders who will never know the woman who baked it. And the last thing you hear is her voice, low and steady, telling the child to sit straighter, to keep the bowl balanced. And the child nods solemnly, as though these tasks are sacred, and perhaps they are, for in this city of gold and conquest and marble, it is this window, this flame, this bread, that endures. You stand now beneath the arch of the southern gate, the one carved with lion heads and lines of old script, worn almost smooth by time, and beside you, leaning lazily against the stone, is a man whose face looks as if it has always belonged to this wall, a watchman not by appointment, but by permanence. His robe faded, patched, soaked with sweat at the chest and underarms, a spear resting against his shoulder, not as a threat, but as a tool, an accessory to his leaning. And he does not speak to you, not right away, but offers you a sip from his cracked gourd, the water warm and metallic. And when you hand it back, he gives a faint nod, then turns his gaze back to the road, the one that stretches beyond the horizon, beyond the heat, shimmer, and dust, a road that leads nowhere and everywhere depending on what a man is fleeing from. And you look too, out at the emptiness, and you realize that nothing passes here without him knowing that he has become part of the stone. That time filters through him, not around him, and when he finally speaks, his voice is dry as parchment and just as brittle, telling you stories not with grandeur, but with shrugging honesty, as if to say, this is how it has always been. And he points with his chin to a wagon rolling toward the city, the wheels clattering softly on sun-baked stones, a figure slumped beneath a faded canopy. And he tells you, without being asked, that the man within is a merchant returning from Elam, and that he is either rich or very desperate, and that his wife will be waiting with her arms crossed. And you wonder how he knows these things. But then you see it tooth-way the oxen pull unevenly, the way the driver does not wave, the way the guard walking behind glances too often over his shoulder, and suddenly this gate, this moment, feels like the city's only breath between inhaling strangers and exhaling stories. And the watchman wipes his brow with a strip of cloth that used to be a tunic, and then shifts, not to stand straighter, but to lean on the opposite hip, his body carving new memory into the stone, and you sense he has done this for decades, not out of duty, but because someone must. And behind you, the city hum-spotters clinking their wares, camels groaning under morning loads, sandals slapping against sun-warmed stone, and before you, only sky and the waiting silence of desert, and he mutters again, this time about the clouds, that they are slow today, that the heat will stay longer, and you do not question how he knows, because you already believe him more than any priest or scribe. And as a hawk circles overhead, his eyes never follow it, but yours do, drawn to the shape, the calm power of it. And then back to the gate, this simple passage that has become a judgment, a filter, a quiet test. And another group approaches, pilgrims maybe, or messengers, and the watchman straightens not from respect, but from the rhythm of the day. And you can tell, without words, that he has watched armies pass through here, and beggars, and brides, and prisoners, and he remembers them all not by name, but by the sound their feet made, by the way their eyes search the walls, and you begin to feel as though you too are being marked, etched lightly into the memory of this man who remembers with his bones. And as the sun climbs higher, the gate shifts from shadow to glare, and he steps backward without thinking, pulling you with him into the cool fringe of the wall's shadow, and you hear him say something under his breath, something like soon, but the wind swallows it, and the world holds still, and the city waits, always waits, for what comes next. You walk now through a part of the city that few mention by name, a quiet quarter wrapped in sun and silence, where the gardens bloom not with soft petals or fragrant trees, but with stone, with fire, with memory, where every path is paved in crushed quartz that crunches like frost beneath your sandals, and the walls lean slightly inward as if listening, carved with faded reliefs of winged beasts, open hands, and watchful eyes that seem to glow faintly in the heat haze. And though no smoke curls from the altars here, you smell the coranchant, old, baked into the clay, mingling with the sweetness of incense dust lingering in the crevices, a scent like burnt myrrh and cedar oil clinging to your breath, and each step forward draws you deeper, slower, the air growing thicker, not hot but heavy, pressed down by the weight of reverence and the hush of old things. And you pass a column shaped like a woman's arm reaching toward the sky, her fingers chipped and the stone darkened where the sun has kissed it too long. And beyond that, an obelisk half sunk in sand, its tip broken, its message lost, but still it stands, stubborn, eternal, and you feel as though the garden watches you, not with malice, but with tired curiosity, the kind a god might offer a candle flame's maul, warm, flickering in the great wind of centuries, and beneath your feet the ground feels warm, not from the sun, but from something older, deeper, a quiet heat pulsing like breath. And you pause at a circular altar, its edges stained with offerings long evaporated, and you see that someone has placed a single pomegranate there, fresh, red, glistening, untouched by flies, as if it had been placed only moments before, and beside it, a feather black, long, curved balanced perfectly, as if dropped by a bird too heavy for the sky, and you look upward, half expecting to see it still circling, but there is only cloudless blue and the faint shimmer of distance, and the silence deepens until it hums, until you hear things that might not be there, a chant carried on wind, the sharp snap of a flint striking stone, the low murmur of something vast and old stirring beneath your feet, and you realize this garden was never meant for rest, not in the way a tree-shaded grove is, but for remembrance, for reckoning. A place where flame and stone bear witness to the hands that built this empire and the ones that burned in the process. And you keep walking, slow, reverent, each movement stirring dust and memory, passing low walls etched with names worn smooth, and steps that spiral downward into cool shadow but never quite vanish from sight. And you sense, just out of view, a figure watching, a priest perhaps, or something else, quiet, unmoving, their presence more like temperature than shape, and though you never see them, you feel the weight of their attention, soft but present. And in the far end of the garden, you reach a brazier long extinguished, but still warm to the touch, as if the memory of fire alone could heat iron, and you sit for a while beside it, not to rest, but to listen. And the wind shifts, lifting your hair slightly, carrying with it the scent of ash and orange blossom, strange and comforting. And you close your eyes, and you see not darkness, but red, gold, black, and you hear drums, not loud, but steady, slow, like a pulse, echoing not in your ears, but somewhere deeper, as if the garden remembers your breath now, has taken it into its rhythm. And though no one speaks, you understand something has been marked. Some part of you has been written into this place, not with ink, not with chisel, but with presence, with stillness. And as you rise, your knees slow and heavy, the heat pressing gently against your shoulders, you feel not fear, but belonging, as though you were always meant to pass through here, always meant to touch the altar, to smell the pomegranate, to hear the chant hidden beneath silence. And you walk on, back toward the city that stirs just beyond the high garden walls. And for a moment, you imagine them gone, that this is all that remains, stone and fire and memory. And you feel oddly calm at the thought. You step through a narrow doorway carved into a wall of dark veined stone, a passage so old its frame seems to lean slightly forward, as if bowing to all who enter. And the moment you cross the threshold, the air shifts, not colder, not warmer, simply different, as though sound itself softens and the space around you thickens with something ancient and unseen. And before you is a room that does not belong to any century, any empire, or any king. A chamber suspended in stillness, where the torches do not flicker, and the dust does not rise, and your feet make no sound upon the polished floor, which glows faintly with veins of golden mineral running like quiet rivers beneath a surface smoothed by 1,000 silent steps. And overhead, the ceiling curves like the inside of a dome or the ribs of a massive animal, painted with faded blues and golds that might have once been constellations, or just the imagined dreams of a forgotten artist. And the walls are lined with niches, each holding a vessel, a relic, a sealed scroll, a mask with empty eye sockets, a stone tablet inscribed with lines you cannot read. And they watch you, all of them, not with menace but with memory, as though your presence here has stirred something dormant, not hostile, not welcoming, merely curious. And in the center of the room stands a pedestal carved from ivory-colored rock, and upon it rests nothing at all, just a circle of light shaped like an echo. And you feel drawn to it, not compelled, not commanded, but invited in the way a breeze might invite you to step forward into a forest. And you reach out, slowly, your hand trembling not from fear, but from the deep sense that whatever happens here is not meant to be remembered. And as your fingers pass through the light, there is no resistance, no warmth, no cold, just a sudden knowing, like stepping into water that has been waiting exactly for your weight. And in that moment, something shifts not in the room, but within you, like a thread has been pulled loose, and the room sighs. Or maybe it is you who sighs. And behind you, the doorway is still there, still open. But you sense that leaving would not return you to the same world. Not quite, not fully. And you understand now why there are no markings on the walls to say who built this place or why. Because it was not meant to be known, only felt. And in the quiet, you hear what might be a ticking sound, slow and deep, but not mechanical, more like the rhythm of dripping water in a cavern or the long exhale of stone expanding in heat. And you realize it is your own pulse, but slowed, as though time in this space does not move forward or backward, but inward, folding softly toward the center of itself. And you remember a name, yours perhaps, or someone else, and then it slips from you like smoke, and you feel no need to retrieve it, because in this room, identity is as weightless as dust, and the vessels along the walls hold not objects, but moments, preserved not in shape, but in feeling. And one of them, a small clay jar, seems to hum softly when you draw near, and when you place your hand over it, you feel warmth, not from fire, but from touch, from the memory of hands that shaped it. And you close your eyes and see fingers dipped in river clay, sunlight filtering through reeds, a woman's laugh echoing across the water. And when you open your eyes, the jar is still, silent again, and you step back, not to leave, but to respect. and the room continues to breathe around you, not needing you, not dismissing you, simply allowing you to exist within its pause. And you wonder how long you've stood here, minutes, hours, a century, and yet your body feels neither tired nor restless, only calm, as if you have returned to something you did not know you lost. And as you begin to walk once more, slowly, the circle of light fades from the pedestal, and the doorway behind you grows brighter, not because anything outside has changed, but because you have, and you step through again, not to escape, but to carry this stillness with you, to remember that somewhere in the heart of the world, there is a place untouched by hour or season, where memory curls like incense in the air, and breath moves like a tide, and the only true time is the rhythm of presence. You descend slowly, 1 foot at a time, the stairs carved deep into the earth, each step worn hollow at the center by countless feet, countless centuries, as if the stone itself has learned to yield, to cradle the souls of those who walked before you. And the deeper you go, the cooler the air becomes, not icy, but ancient, like the breath of a world beneath this world, and you begin to hear it. At first just a faint crackle, like dry wood shifting in a fire pit, and then stronger, a living rhythm of flame echoing through the tunnels ahead, and the scent reaches you next, sharp and clean. The burn of frankincense, the sweet curl of myrrh, and something older still, a mineral edge like burning stone and wet ash. And when the tunnel opens at last into a wide chamber, your breath catches not from fear, but reverence, for before you stands the heart of fire itself, a temple without walls, only a circle of obsidian pillars rising toward a dome of blackened rock. And in the center, a brazier the size of a chariot, flames dancing in it with a slow, deliberate grace, not leaping, not wild, but held steady, like a whisper that never dies. And you step forward, the soles of your feet brushing against stone tiles etched with markings long since worn unreadable, and your shadow flickers across the floor in waves, as if your body no longer belongs to just one place. And all around the edges of the chamber are alcoves, and in them sit figures, statues perhaps, or priests turned to stone, or watchers who have never moved, wrapped in robes the color of soot and rust, heads bowed, hands clasped over their laps, their faces hidden by the hoods of time, and none speak, but you feel them noticing you, not with judgment, but with the deep stillness of those who have waited. And at the edge of the flame, a small stone bowl rests atop a pedestal carved with lions, and beside it, a jug, plain, terracotta, heavy with something inside, and without knowing why, you reach for it and pour its contents into the bowl thick, golden oil that catches the firelight and seems to glow with its own memory. And the moment it touches the bowl, the flames rise, not violently, not to consume, but to bless, and you feel warmth not only on your skin, but in your chest, as though a forgotten ember there has been gently stirred back to life. And you kneel, without knowing why, without needing to ask, and the warmth flows into you, not burning, not blinding, but anchoring, and for a moment. You are not just yourself, but many selves, the boy who first tended this flame, the woman who carried the oil from the market, the old man who sang to it through nights of war, the child who slept curled beside it during famine, and the priest who chose to die beside it when the temple fell. And you understand now why it was built underground, hidden from sky and storm, for it was never meant to be seen, only remembered, only kept, a promise of light in the belly of the earth. And slowly you rise, not hurried, not uncertain, and one of the hooded figures opens their eyes, not wide, not startled, just open, and their gaze meets yours with the quiet of mountains. And though they do not speak, you hear them clearly, not in words, but in knowing the flame will remember you, now, and you it. And as you turn to leave, the fire lowers again, steady, low, eternal, and the path behind you seems brighter now, though no torches have been lit, and the air smells not of ash anymore, but of salt and wind, and above, somewhere far above, you sense the sky, waiting, and you ascend slowly, the steps no longer cold but warm underfoot, And as you emerge once more into the night, you feel it, the fire inside you has not gone out, only moved deeper, to a place no wind can reach. You follow the path eastward where the ground flattens and the air thins just slightly. And as you walk, the wind begins to play with the edges of your robes, not as a storm, but as something curious, tugging lightly at your sleeves, brushing past your ears with faint whistles and sighs. And you notice the sky shifting too, clouds high and pale, stretched across the heavens like silk pulled taut. And then, without quite realizing how, you are standing before it, a palace that seems not built, but born, its walls shaped from stone so pale it nearly disappears into the brightness behind it, with archways carved like waves and towers that taper into the wind itself. And you step through the first gate and the wind deepens, not howling, not cold, but layered, as if carrying voices and feathers and echoes of footsteps that never quite touch the ground. And ahead of you rises a corridor of mirrors, not the kind made from glass, but polished bronze, obsidian, and still pools of water, some set into walls, some floating on raised platforms, and some shifting slightly as if breathing. And in each one you glimpse not yourself as you are, but versions of you stretched and softened by time, the child who once ran barefoot through a garden, the elder with creased eyes and quiet strength, the stranger with golden eyes and desert dust in their lashes. And though they do not speak, they nod to you as you pass, recognizing you as a fellow traveler, not as a reflection, but as kin. And further in, the air becomes warmer, not with heat, but with motion, as though the palace itself is exhaling slowly around you, its breaths forming rustling sounds and distant curtains, the creak of old wooden beams, the hush of silk being drawn across stone floors. And you begin to feel as if you are not walking through space, but through memory itself, as if each step moves you through layers of forgotten afternoons and vanished ceremonies, where voices once whispered treaties and fingers once traced lines on parchment maps now lost to dust. And then you come upon the chamber they call the Wind Hall, where no roof remains, only a ring of columns rising like ribs of an ancient creature, and in the center a single stone seat carved with patterns too old to name. And you sit, not because you're told to, but because your body understands it must. And when you do, the wind settles suddenly, like a held breath, and in that stillness, you hear them. Not with your ears, but within your chest stories layered like folds of cloth, carried by the air from all corners of the earth, from mountain monks and desert kings and salt-rusted sailors. Voices telling of floods and droughts and harvests and births, of revolutions whispered in cellars and of lullabies hummed beside fires. And as you sit there, your hands resting palm up on your knees, you feel something pass through you, not a vision, not a dream, but a memory that does not belong to you yet welcomes you in. And suddenly you are standing in a long-forgotten courtyard where paper lanterns drift upward into a warm evening, and your hands are those of someone else, someone who once loved this place, who once danced where your feet now rest. And when you blink, the vision fades, not entirely, but gently, like breath against glass, and the wind returns, brushing your cheek like a farewell, not an ending, only a release, and you rise again, walking now without question, deeper into the palace's winding inner halls, where the mirrors grow fewer and the air grows heavier, like the pause before a storm, or the moment a secret is about to be spoken aloud. And at last, you come to a door, not grand or gilded, but made of cedar and bound with bronze, and when you touch it, it opens inward without sound, revealing a chamber of silence so complete it hums in your bones. And here there are no mirrors, no wind, no light save for a faint blue glow seeping up from the floor itself. And in the center is a pool of still water, no larger than a shield, and you kneel beside it, your reflection wavering not from ripple, but from something deeper. And as you gaze, you do not see your face, but a sky, vast and unfamiliar, stars and strange constellations wheeling across it. And for a moment, you understand this is not a mirror of you, but of the world that will come after you, shaped in part by your presence, your choices, your silence. And you dip your fingers into the pool and feel not water, but the weightless pull of wind again. And it gathers around you like a cloak, like a farewell blessing from something that does not speak but has always watched. And when you rise, the door closes softly behind you, and the wind meets you once more in the corridor, no longer pulling or whispering, but simply accompanying. And as you make your way back through the palace, you notice the mirrors are now still, quiet, empty, as though they too have gone to rest. And outside, the sky has deepened, stars just beginning to pierce the velvet dusk, and the wind carries a faint scent of cedar and lavender. And far off, a low chime echoes across the hills, a sound so soft it might be imagined, but you know it was real, because you felt it not in your ears, but in your breath. You follow the winding path down a gentle slope where the wind softens and the dust settles, and as you walk, the noise of the world recedes behind you, replaced by a sound so delicate you almost mistake it for silence, the hush of water dripping from leaf to stone, the faint rustle of bamboo swaying in rhythm with your breath. And before you lies a gate not made of iron or gold, but of dark lacquered wood, carved with vines and blossoms and tiny sleeping birds. And when you step through it, the air itself seems to bow, becoming warm and fragrant, as if welcoming you into something sacred but unspoken. And this is the Emperor's garden, not vast or showy, but hidden, private, known only to a few, its paths winding through low trees with silver leaves and moss-covered stones that give underfoot with a softness like memory. And there are no guards here, no walls of marble, only the quiet presence of time. And you follow the stepping stones to a small pavilion with curved eaves and hanging lanterns that sway ever so slightly, though there is no breeze. And there, beneath its shade, is a bench carved from single smooth stone. And when you sit, the weight of the journey seems to pour gently from your shoulders, and you exhale, not with effort, but with the kind of surrender that needs no explanation. And across from you, a tree leans gracefully over a koi pond, its trunk twisted like the folds of old cloth, and the fish move slowly, their scales catching what little light remains, like the last gold coins of a kingdom once great. And beside the bench sits a small brazier, still warm, its coals glowing softly like the breath of an old friend, and the scent rising from it is a blend of cedar and plum blossoms, and something older, perhaps a root once burned in the days of the first emperor, something that smells like patience and earth and quiet defiance. And as you sit, the lanterns glow brighter, not because night has fallen, but because they remember how to guide the weary, and you look up and see the sky, not as darkness, but as deep velvet stitched with fire. And every star seems to move slowly, as if rearranging themselves just for this moment. And somewhere behind the trees, you hear the soft padding of feet, not approaching, not retreating, just passing, perhaps a gardener, or perhaps the emperor himself on one of his walks. For this is where he came not to rule, but to be small again, to let the burden fall away in the rustle of leaves and the rhythm of water. And now you do the same, not because anyone told you to, but because the garden understands. And in this space, there is nothing more to be done, nothing more to become, only the hum of being, the slow bloom of presence, and your thoughts settle like petals on still water. And the stone under you holds you not as a seat, but as a memory, and the trees whisper in a language older than empires, a lullaby sung in the wind's own tongue. And if you close your eyes, you are not escaping, only listening more clearly, and you feel the warmth of the brazier beside you like a heartbeat, steady, unhurried, and the world does not fall away, but wraps itself around you gently, like a robe woven from dusk and silence. And in that stillness, a final thought rises, not loud, not sharp. Just present the emperors built walls and towers and temples. They conquered lands and named stars after themselves. But when the wars were done, when the scrolls were sealed and the servants dismissed, this is where they came, to sit beneath this tree, to watch the koi drift, to let the fire burn down slowly into coals. And now, so do you, not as a ruler, not as a guest, but as part of the garden, as much as the stone or the branch or the fading scent of plum. And the garden keeps no record, asks no names, only receives, only continues, and the stars blink above, unconcerned, and the night deepens, and the coals dim, and somewhere beyond the pavilion, a wind chime sings once, then falls silent. So now, If you've made it this far, then perhaps you've crossed more than just time. You've sat with emperors, wandered lost palaces, heard forgotten prayers, and left no footprints behind. You've been the ghost in the hallway, the breath behind the curtain, the listener of things never written down. And if it all feels strangely familiar, don't worry. That's just history finding its way home to you. No need to subscribe, no need to remember what you've heard. Just let it stay with you, like the scent of cedar in your hair, or the cool stone beneath your hands. And if you feel a little heavier now, or perhaps lighter, it's not by accident. That's what stories do when they linger too long in quiet places. Now, it'll stop speaking, not because there is nothing left to say, but because the fire will say it better. The sound of burning embers, slow and steady, like the breath of time itself. So, go ahead. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. The garden is yours, and the silence was always waiting.